Interrupt the honourable member. His time has expired. Call Gareth Hughes.
Kia ora, Mr Speaker. Ngā mihi nui kia koutou kia ora. I rise to take a call and oppose this bill. I'd like to thank the submitters and the Select Committee staff, the officials who worked on it. Mr Speaker, the Greens are the only party, I'm not sure about New Zealand First, who are opposing this bill, who's been clear throughout the whole process of this bill from first through to second reading. We're opposed to this bill because of the repayment holiday first and foremost. We're opposed because it's not been analysed, we're opposed because it has not been recommended by officials, and we're opposed because what we're going to see is more Kiwis moving overseas. That's going to be the outcome. It's not an outcome we want to see on this side of the House, and that's why we'll be voting against it. The bill does three key things. The first is closing the loophole around the pay period changes for repayment. The Green Party supports that. We think that's common sense. About time we did it. Secondly, the bill has the requirement to have a New Zealand contact for a person going overseas. Again, it's common sense. The Greens support it. We don't know why we didn't do it more than 10 years ago, because I think it's uncontroversial. Everyone in the House could support it. However, the third key part of the bill, the repayment holiday, is the reason we'll be voting against this bill. Coupled with the other changes on the government benches to tertiary education, which has seen it become less accessible, less affordable, and in some cases downright impossible, as the government for the first time in our history slams the door on prospective students with their capped enrolment, not even giving students a heads up they can't enter university, that they've slammed the door on our open egalitarian system. So at a time of huge economic questions, huge social questions, where we're struggling for a big picture and economic strategy which is actually going to deliver prosperity, that's going to be able to lift our kids out of poverty, they've dropped the education ball. They've made it less affordable, less accessible, and in some cases impossible to be a student in New Zealand, to get upskilled, to contribute to our economy. Instead, what they've gone down the path, and Minister Heatley knows all too well about this, the drill it, mine it approach. Coupled with the cut it, sell it approach, this is the only ideas that the government's got to sell off our assets, to cut our essential services, and to dig up the ground. So in a sector where we already pay $3,000 less than the OECD average, when we're dropping down all the international tertiary education rankings, this government, coupled with the ideological solution in search of a problem, the voluntary student membership bill, is all about trying to harm the sector, and that's our big fear on the student loan amendment bill we've got in front of us now. So what we've heard from the Greens spokesperson on education, Holly Walker, that there's been no empirical research, no analysis of the impact of the repayment holiday changing from 1 to 3 years. We know the officials advised against it, and we know we're actually going to see Kiwis going overseas. So when National was elected and ran on a platform to see less Kiwis going across the ditch, to close that gap with Australia, what they're doing is legislating bills which are going to see more Kiwis move overseas. It's self-evident common sense. If you go overseas for an OE, and we know the average from the New Zealand Kia survey is actually between 3 and 5 years, not 1 year, that we're going to see Kiwis stay overseas. We're not going to see Kiwis diligently run home to start their repayments because the government has changed the rules from 3 to 1 year. What we're going to see is Kiwis move overseas, and that's the advice from officials. A key question I'd like to see resolved in the committee stages is what happens to those students who right now, tomorrow or a month ago applied for a 3-year exemption holiday? What happens? Do they automatically go down to the 1 year? Do they exist on the 3-year current regime? But in a nutshell, what we're seeing is bad law with no empirical analysis, ignoring the advice from officials and actively seeing more Kiwis move overseas. Mr Speaker, we'll be having none of this, and this is why we're the only party opposing this bill.
Call Michael Woodhouse.
Mr Speaker, that was exactly the same speech that